let's move along here to Nick S with a non-hand call. Is that right, Nick? How you doing?
That's right. How's it going, Bart?
Pretty good. Is this played at the bike? Played from the bike or something?
No, this is played at Oaks
Oh,
Card
Oaks.
Club up in the Bay Area.
Yep.
Yep.
Never went in there, but I'm familiar. One of the Bay Area
Yeah.
card clubs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good spot.
Yeah.
Yeah, so non-hand call, kind of about a floor ruling that I wanted to get your opinion on.
Okay.
So the hand prior to the hand in question is important here. So to quickly summarize that, I was under the gun, just folded. I wasn't involved in any of these hands, but there was a mid-position open. This is a 1-2-3 game to 20, which is standard. The seat 2 is going to be like, I'll call him the villain. So he calls in the big blind.
Okay.
There's a straddle, $6 straddle under the gun, and that guy announces a raise to $320.
So gigantic raise. Okay.
Right.
Uh-huh.
And so him and the mid-position player are both deep. They're like 1,200 deep.
Mm-hmm.
The villain in seat 2 is like 250, 260 deep. Mid-position folds, and then so it gets back to the seat 2 guy who is like, why'd you go up to 320? This is so weird, such a weird sizing, and he ends up tabling his hand before making any action.
Okay.
And he has 8-5 offsuit.
Okay.
And he says, I really want to call you with like this terrible hand just to see what you have. And he ends up calling for all in. Loses the all in. The guy had pocket jacks. And so at this point, like, he's a little bit tilted that he just made like a pre-flop all in call with 8 high.
Okay.
And so we move on to this next hand. So so C2's in the small blind now.
He rebuys, I take it.
So, yes. So at this point, the dealer deals one card to everybody and gets back around to the small blind.
Okay.
And she asks, how much are you in for? And he says,
the dealer asks how much, because, so small blind just got broke last hand, doesn't have money on the table, but
no money and no chips.
And what's the minimum buy-in in the game?
I think 100.
Okay. So, even as you go along with your story, I've seen this so many times, just to boil it down. It's a player that got broke the hand before, right?
Right.
Probably like going into his pot, he has no chips in front of him, and the dealer starts dealing. And what, after the first card, or is she dealt like a whole round?
Yeah, so she deals the full round. So everybody has one card.
Okay.
And she's about to give the small blind his second card. And she says, how much are you in for? And he says 300.
Okay.
And so at this point, there's no chips, no cash on the table at all. Gives everybody the second card.
Mm-hmm.
And then the pre-flop action starts.
Okay. Hasn't called for a chip runner or anything like that? Hasn't given any money to anybody?
No, hasn't. There's no. I think the dealer might have at this point said chips on table, whatever.
Yeah.
But I'm not completely sure.
Okay.
Anyway, so it folds around to the button, who opens to 20. Small blind calls and big blind calls. He just verbally says call.
So the button goes to 20. The small blind, who's the guy with no money, right? No money?
Right, that's right.
Yeah, he calls with no money in front of him, but he's announced 300. Okay.
Exactly.
Yep.
And then big blind calls for 20, straddle folds.
Yep.
So the dealer puts out the flop. The flop is 10 deuce deuce with 2 spades.
Okay.
So action starts on the small blind, obviously, and right as the flop comes out, he's reaching into his back pocket to grab his wallet.
Mm-hmm.
But before he opens up his wallet or anything like that, he verbally announces all in.
So before you tell me anything, here, we'll go on with your story. If I was the big blind or the button and ended up in a situation where I had a calling hand, so say for example, the button folds and I'm the button, the big blind folds in the spot and I'm the button and I'm going to, let's say I had a hand where I was going to call, or even if it was close, I would then say, he's all in for 300, right? He's all in for 300, right? Just as somebody who's seasoned and very, very experienced, I'm sure I've been in this kind of spot before. This is going to get a little bit dicey, but it's definitely going to, now we'll debate obviously it's partially the dealer's fault, it's the room's fault, but as a way to protect yourself, if you or somebody in this hand, you've got to sort of stop and sort of figure out and just confirm. You can't let somebody free roll you. You need to confirm. And then I would kind of make it clear that the guy had said, 300. So what happens?
Right. So it was very clear that he had said 300. Like there was no question about that. But there almost like wasn't even enough time to ask like whether he was all in for 300 because he says all in.
Yep.
Like reaches into his wallet, grabs all the cash, and he's only got $55 in there.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And so the reason I told you about like the previous hand is because like I think he immediately, it was pretty obvious that he immediately regretted like announcing all in on the flop.
Yeah.
And was still like pretty tilted from the previous hand. And so he goes, I only have $55. That's all I'm in for.
Oh God. Oh God. This is actually one that I might not have seen. I mean, I'll tell you what should happen is that I should go to my buddy Alan, who works in Houston, who used to work at the bike. But I mean, so for the most part, well, it's California, right? It's Oaks. So I'm pretty familiar with, like, they can't make the guy. Here's the thing. Like I always talk about when you protect yourself in a given hand, right? I've never really had to do this, but no one can force a player to put all their money or their chips in the pot, even if they verbally say it. Like if I had $2,000 in front of me and I was some like big time angler and you checked me and I said all in and I didn't put the money in the pot and you said call and you had the best hand, I could just walk out. Okay. It's a civil matter. It's not a criminal matter. They will bar you. That is the precedent until, you pay. And a lot of times depending on the situation, the house actually might make good on it to you and then try to collect from the other player at some point in the future. Sometimes they won't. I've talked about that situation in the Omaha 8. Well, they didn't pay me. This guy came back and paid me after they went to the cameras. But what I would say here is that if I was the floor, I would say all this action is binding. You're all in for 300 and that's the bet. And then if he somehow loses and doesn't have the money, he's got to come back and pay it or he's barred. Now, I know as somebody who's an opponent, that kind of sucks if the guy never comes back, but I think that's the only way you can really rule it. So you see what I'm saying? Like it's a $300 bet. He's got to pay it if he loses. It kind of gives him a little bit too much of an advantage. I think it kind of gives him too much of an advantage to say, "Oh, I'm only in for 55." But I don't know how else they would handle this.
Yeah, it was a very weird situation. So once he announces like all in and then says I'm only in for 55, like people were like, okay, that's sus. And the dealer kind of immediately says, I got to call over the floor.
Sure.
She doesn't make like any decision or anything.
Right.
And so this guy kind of gets out of his seat and he starts like going at the dealer like pretty hard.
This guy, the short stack guy?
Yeah, the small blind.
Okay.
And he was like, I only have $55. I can't be in for 300. Like, this is ridiculous. He started saying, like, you guys are incompetent here. Like, there's no way you can make me pay the $300. Like, blah, blah, blah.
Well, they can't make him pay the $300, but he broke the rules of the card room, so he's not allowed back in ever for life if he doesn't pay it. I know that sucks for the other players, and it's sort of weird because I got to tell you, like, you want these types of guys in the game, right? You want recreational players in the game. It's a very delicate type of situation when somebody calls for chips or declares that they're behind and you don't necessarily know them and you're like, I'm not playing until he gets the money, right? Can you imagine if you said that to someone that you didn't know and you haven't, and there's no reason to think like he's some sort of cheater or scumbag. Like it just kind of sets like this kind of gray black cloud over the game. You know what I mean? Like it's just weird, right? Like it's just a weird thing. I don't think I've ever said, maybe once or twice, and maybe once in my whole career, and there had to be some history. You know what I'm saying? Like I remember a guy at Commerce that used to do a thing where he would, Actually, there was a guy at Commerce, super high stakes, like 15 years ago, that would do this bullshit too. But he was known to people. So for a guy like that, you have to. It's similar to like it's similar to when you check and somebody bets all in without putting the chips in the pot, right? Are you going to make the guy put the chips in the pot if you don't know him? I mean, it's just kind of part of the game, right? What are you going to do? So it's easy for someone to say, I would never play the hand out if the guy didn't have money in front of him. That's really not the reality, really, of it. But what the guy is saying is entirely wrong. I mean, I think I've kind of hit on the right ruling. So what ended up happening?
I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah.
But so it turned out, so this guy kind of started throwing a fit. The floor walked over, dealer's telling him what's going on. Like he's yelling at the floor now. The players and the two other players in the hand are like giving what they think is happening, and like there's all this commotion going on.
Sure.
Like players from other tables are like getting up and like trying to see what's going on and stuff. Anyway, so the floor just decides this guy's only in for $55. He only has $55. That's the bet.
I don't think that's the right ruling. I really don't. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was. So once that happened, actually before that even happened, he, to make it more interesting, he said, whatever, I don't even care, and like threw his cards into the muck, like threw them. And so they landed like on the flop, and the 5 of spades was exposed.
Okay.
And
what about the other card? Is the other card retrievable?
The other card is still face down. Both are retrievable.
Okay, then it's definitely going to get retrieved. His hand shouldn't be dead. Yeah.
It did get retrieved.
Yeah.
They got the cards back, whatever.
Yeah.
So the floor ruled that the bet was 35 because, minus 20 for the preflop. And then the big blind folded and it got back around to the button who called.
Okay.
So the button had 5 deuce offsuit trips.
Yeah.
And which is funny. And the other guy had pocket 5s, which just kind of makes it hilarious. But
oh wow, 1 out though.
He gives him the money. And so the guy ends up, C2, the villain, ends up leaving the table, and the floor like goes over to the corner to like talk to this guy.
Talk to the guy that just left the table?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were talking to him for like 10 minutes or whatever. And what I thought was they were going to tell him, go take the money out of the ATM and pay him if you want to keep playing, or like you're going to get kicked out.
Well, how could they do that though? If they ruled the bet was only 35, how could they go back and say you owe the guy 2 cents? I mean, it's so wrong on so multiple levels. It doesn't surprise me. I've seen so much incompetency so I've seen some good floor guys, but I've seen some really bad rulings too. Okay, go on.
Yeah. This guy. Yeah. Anyway, so he never paid, the button the rest of like the $245. And the shocking thing to me was after this all like happened, they let the guy change tables and just like keep playing in a different 1, 2, 3 game.
They let the guy who only had $55 in his wallet go and get more money and play at another table?
Yes.
Oh my God. Oh, that's beyond. Here's the thing. I mean, I always have to make a caveat with a lot of these sort of stories where, and it's not that I don't trust you, Elliot, although I will say, Nick, I'm sorry. I will say, Nick, that the amount of detail that you've gone into, it really makes, I truly do believe you. There are some people that people call in and I'm like, I don't know if these guys are actually relaying the correct story or what, but you sound pretty concise about it, and it doesn't surprise me. I mean, it surprises me but that is just, that's insanity. That is insanity.
It was crazy because like, so I wanted to get your opinion on it. Like, number one, because I disagreed with the ruling, like on multiple levels, like you were saying. But number two, like this, I feel like there's a I don't want to say very good, but there's a reasonably possible chance that I find myself in a situation like this because they're very lenient at this card club. Like,
wow, sounds like it.
Just in general.
Well, California clubs are always like the Wild West. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
I've never played at Oaks, but it doesn't surprise me.
There's a lot of like wild players.
Yeah.
That come here. And when people get stacked, like this happens a lot where they don't put any cash on the table. They don't like go to the ATM. There's no chips and stuff. And I've never had a situation where like I get into a big pot with somebody that doesn't have money or chips in front of them, but it definitely could happen. And if I was the button in this hand, like I would 100% feel like I was free rolled and cheated out of $245.
I'm surprised the button didn't put the button was sort of at an advantage though too, in the sense that he flopped like basically what is the nuts, right? And I'm surprised that he didn't put up more of a stink. Okay, I'll answer your question. There's sort of two sides to this. You absolutely need to be aware of these sort of sketchy characters in these places, and you need to protect yourself. For some reason, something just popped in my head where there was this lady that played a lot at Hollywood Park too, another LA club. How about this for one? What she would do is, like in a no limit game, if she lost like an all in pot, she would make it look like she was mad, and she would shove her chips into the pot, like, I lost, right? While she shoved her chips into the pot, she was actually palming chips too, as well. So she was, and they caught her. They caught her and barred her for a while, but then she was back. I think she played Omaha 8 with us, and then she was back in. So you see these types of sketchy characters. So you absolutely have to be on guard and protect yourself, because there's probably a lot of scumbags. There's probably a lot of anglers, okay? Here's the other side to this, though. You want to play with these types of people. They are bad players. They are terrible players, right? So there's a little bit of a balance. That's why, even if I saw this guy do that, if I saw this guy do this and it went down and something else had happened before, I might speak up because we've seen him happen before. But I kind of let in commerce. I let some of the I remember actually tweeting about this too. I kind of let like bad players do slight angles towards me sometimes, just because I know it's always coming back anyways. I know that Lyman has a 2+2 thread up, obviously the legend Lyman, and it's like he tells these stories in his PLO game about how he knew guys were trying to cheat, but it didn't matter, kicking each other under the table, or because they were so bad anyways, they were going to lose. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of part of this sort of gambling culture, especially in California. So I wouldn't be like so scared and like, I'm never going to go back to that room if the game is good. You just got to understand what comes with the territory.
Yeah, definitely.
Is what I would
say.
But
what would you do if you were the button in that situation? Would you try to present a case to the floor to why he should be in for 300, or would you just completely let it go? Or
if I was the button, here's the thing, whether I have a deuce or a 10, it's the same call. You know what I'm saying? This is how I would look at it from the button, right? On 10 deuce with two spades, even if the guy went in for 300 and I had king 10 plus or a deuce or an overpair, I'm still calling. So it's not even necessarily that he just flopped a deuce. It's more of, I would have said I probably wouldn't have made a huge stink of it, because I don't know. It's kind of case by case. He went into his pocket. Maybe he didn't really know he didn't have any money left. I'm not sure. But again, I probably wouldn't have made a big stink of it, even though the guy is entirely in the right to make a big stink of it. Because look at this guy. You know what I'm saying? It's coming back, right?
Yeah.
You know what
totally.
I'm saying? It's coming back. So that's the balance. But
yeah, and the button kind of did make not a huge stink out of it, but he did kind of make a deal out of it,
yeah,
and it just kind of kills the vibe at the table.
Yeah,
like what you're saying.
Yeah. That's
the game just kind of went to shit after that, and
exactly, absolutely.
There was a new player at the table who had never played, and he was scared and stuff. It's just
yeah, of course. I appreciate the call, Nick. Thank you very much. That was a good one.
Yeah,
that was
thanks,
a good
Bart.
one. Definitely a unique one, but you know, Wild West in California, absolute Wild West for sure.